JQ Multimedia present before you the first episode of its talk show series. Today we have His Grace Abraham Mar Stephanos, who is the new Primate and Metropolitan for the Diocese of UK, Europe and Africa of the Malyon Orthodox Syrian Church, also known as the Indian Orthodox Church. Reverend Deacon Daniel Malyon will be interviewing His Grace Abraham Mar Stephanos. Thirumeni is widely considered as a great theologian, teacher, mentor, and a good friend. Thirumeni was born in Kerala, India, and he did his secular education in Kerala, India. His Eminence had secured the Bachelor's of Divinity degree with a gold medal from Serampore University. He also secured a Master's in Theology from Serampore University. He also did an MA in Late Antiquity and Byzantine Studies from King's College London. Thirumeni had served the Church across various positions, such as being the Vicar, Professor of Theology at the Malyon Orthodox Old Seminary, Kottayam, as well as being the Secretary of the Ecumenical and Interchurch Relations of the Malyon Orthodox Church. Thirumeni's vision about the future is quite astonishing, especially his focus on the work amongst the youth to bridge the path to balance life and spirituality. Thirumeni is very fond of the younger generation, and we can clearly see that from his insightful speeches. It gives the youth a sense of belonging, and it is truly inspiring. Thirumeni provides a space for the youth to grow their curiosity, as well as enrich the faith that we all hold. He does not pass judgments, which makes us more relatable to him, and the concepts that he puts forth are very insightful. Deacon Daniel is a deacon in the Coptic Orthodox Church. He had studied theology and philosophy and religion at Cardiff University, and he did a further master's in Orthodox theology from Winchester University. He now works as a teacher of theology and religion in East London. Today, let us listen to His Grace talk about the orthodoxy and the lineage and cultural ethnicity of the Malyon Orthodox Church, and the strength of the community, as well as the challenges faced by the Church in the secular world.
Hello, I am Deacon Daniel Malyon of the Coptic Orthodox Diocese of London, under His Eminence Archbishop Angelos of London. I'm here today with Metropolitan Abraham Mar Stephanos of the Malyon Orthodox Diocese of the UK, Europe and Africa. So, as a brief introduction, Thirumeni, would you like to introduce yourself, your credentials, what brought you to become the Metropolitan?
Well, it is a rather long journey for me, or to that extent, any Metropolitan of the Church, I would say. I joined the seminary rather late, at the age of 26, for my theological education. Back home in Kerala, in Kottayam, where our seminary is located, Orthodox Theological Seminary. That was in 1995. My secular background was, I studied mathematics, and after my graduation, I had a secular job for 3 years, in which time I have got introduced to, I had a passion to to learn theology. Eventually, obviously it is a call that I got ended up at the seminary in 1995. I've graduated in theology in 1999 and got ordained in 2000 as a priest. After which I have joined for my master's degree in patristic theology. That too was with our seminary, which is a federated ecumenical faculty. And in 2002, I have joined as a parish priest in London. For 7 years, I was the vicar in our parish in London. And in 2009, my church called me back to the seminary in teaching. And while I was in London, I was fortunate enough to take another master's in late antiquity and Byzantine studies from King's College London. And I've joined the seminary as my church has asked me as a teacher in systematic theology. And 2009, until 2009, I taught there. From 2009 to 2022, when I was elected as a Metropolitan of the church. And we have a very strong democratical system following a very strong constitution. It was a long process, and in 2022 February, I got elected as a Metropolitan.
Thank you, Tirumeni. So, having left London in 2009 and returned just last year, what do you find has changed in the diocese in that time? Have you found there's much different, or has it stayed largely the same?
No, it's certainly different in terms of many things, actually. In 2009, when I left the country back to the seminary to join there, it was the starting point of the diocese of the UK, Europe, and Africa. Until then, the parishes here were under, Canada, UK, and Europe were part of were constituting one diocese. But a new diocese was formed and a metropolitan was appointed in 2009, and that was the time that I left here. But when I joined after 13 years back when I returned to the country with my new assignment, I could see literally a lot of changes in terms of we have got almost 10 our own places of worship, and then more than 30 venues of worship. And obviously, the number of people migrated in the last 13 years is actually phenomenal. So there is a natural transition and change. And my predecessor, Metropolitan, he had toiled a lot in establishing. We have a center in Swindon and quite a few parishes of our own as well. So positive changes.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely, even here in Cambridge, I think somebody explained to me that the parish itself has doubled in size from 30 to 60 families in the last decade. What would you say is the greatest factor contributing to the growth of these parishes? Do you think it's community-led, or is it more institutional?
Well, obviously it is more related to the community, the good community network and good spirit of them in worshipping God. It is, I could say one thing clearly as a testimony about our church. Many of our members are working in health sector, majority of them. So what I found as a parish priest earlier and even now, when they leave the home country, in India, in South India, many of them, when they end up with some NHS hospitals or any sector, if at all, wherever they are working, many of them, they would first look for a church and a venue of worship. And that itself is a motivation for all the priests and clergy, and personally for me, because our people, they long in their heart, and they are committed for worship. So that is one of the factors that they would certainly like to get connected to a worshiping community of our own tradition. So that is certainly the reason that we are increasing in number. So if you go to any venues of worship or parishes, every single Sunday or every single liturgy, there would be newcomers.
So in this kind of pattern, talking about the growth of the church and this community spirit, and of course the long history that the Malankara Church has had generally in India, coming from St. Thomas, do you think that that's a pattern that you see across your large diocese, across all of Europe, Africa and the UK, or is it different in different areas?
Well, it's a good question. I would say that is the strong point of our spiritual platform where we are in. Because our people, they are quite conscious about their St. Thomas's identity. And honestly speaking, there would be a little bit of bragging as well, because they speak high of it. So that is certainly one of the significant factors among our church members, that they think high of their apostolic tradition. And obviously, it is a pastoral responsibility of any clergy and the leaders of the church that point should not end there. The St. Thomas's consciousness. We should be helping our faithful in growing from that point. That is obviously a good foundation. We consider it as the door through which we enter into the truth of the gospel. The St. Thomas's tradition. But more than a community consciousness based on the St. Thomas's heritage, certainly from there we certainly would like to grow there should be a spiritual ascendancy in it.
Yeah, thank you, Tilamini. So in a similar vein, I suppose I'd ask, what for you is the strongest sticking point for the St. Thomas community? Obviously with a long history within India, as we've just mentioned, and these challenges they faced regarding the Assyrian Church, the Catholic Church, the relationship with the Syriac Church. What do you think is the thing that binds them together?
You mean the community members?
Yeah.
Well, it goes without saying that obviously the first point has already been mentioned. It is our common heritage of St. Thomas's Christian identity. And obviously, as any parents, when they think about their next generation and children, they would like to see their children having a proper Christian upbringing in their own tradition. So that would be another point, or probably a reason for them to come to the church. Obviously, their own spiritual experiences, which is true, but at the same time, for them to see their children learning their faith and tradition and the Holy Scripture, and thank God we have got a good Sunday school for it. So that would be another point. And we cannot just ignore the fact that there are cultural elements too. Because people certainly that they can synchronize, they can come together in the same cultural platform. So I know that it is rather secular, but that community orientation also we cannot just ignore. And even to the extent the good South Indian delicacies also is a factor. We cannot just ignore it for us to be together. So everything will work together. But obviously the points that I have highlighted earlier are quite significant factors. The common St. Thomas's tradition, and for the parents, their intention to see their children growing up with that.
Thank you, Domini. Yes. So keeping along this line of the community and especially the youth, obviously one of the big challenges that many churches are facing is keeping the youth engaged in the church, keeping them learning about their faith, keeping them within this vein of the truth, we could say. What do you think is the largest challenge with regards to the youth facing the Malankara church community?
I think we could more or less generalize my answer because it can be it can be a common factor of the huge influence of secularism and secular patterns of life, where religiosity and spirituality, in certain points will start diminishing its relevance unless otherwise the church would take an effort in catering on to the doctrine and faith of the church, in explaining to the next generation. So one of the main challenges, like any other church that we would probably face and probably facing now, will be how with all the lucrative offers or whatever that we have from the secular world outside, especially it better, the Orthodox services can it can prolong for long. So to keep them with their good interest and passion, for their passion moving, for their spirit moving forward, their interest without getting it diluted away or watered down, for them to have more interest in it. So and there, I think the churches here, our church should look into more seriously about the possible solutions for the future. Obviously, that's one of the greatest challenges on how to keep them together.
Thank you, Tiramini. So, keeping with this topic, obviously, you talked about the challenges there. What is being done as it is with the church? You mentioned about keeping them engaged in learning about their faith. What is the church doing to respond to these challenges?
Well, I would say we are still in an infant stage. But having said that, I'm immensely grateful to my clergy and to the Sunday school teachers here, because it goes without saying that they are doing a wonderful, wonderful job. All of them, invariably, especially the Sunday school teachers, they have full-time jobs and they have to support their family. The sustenance of the family, it should be their priority. But they are traveling extra miles in keeping the spiritual academia on the move, vibrantly. And I have huge admiration to my Sunday school teachers on how organized they are, in centrally and in parish-wise as well. So we have inter-parish activities, we have different zonal activities, and we have Sundays diocesan level activities as well. So that bring the little ones together. They are the future of the church, obviously. And for the young people also, we do have activities, but it's a long way to go. It's certainly a long way to go. And I'm proud of my young people that, for instance, picking up the most recent example is that they come together for the Great Lent evening prayers, 8:30 p.m. every evening online, and different parishes will be taking the responsibilities of leading the Vespers online, and one of the members young people, non-ordained young people, a university student probably, or a young professional. They will be giving a brief reflection from the day's gospel, the evening gospel as well. So that is hugely motivating for me. I found it, that is an admirable thing for them to do. But we have to plan for the future. Many things to do.
Thank you, Tiramini. So, looking at a broader sense, obviously one of your main roles, me being here from the Coptic Church, is a good example of ecumenism in at least we can say intra-Oriental Orthodox ecumenism. As part of your role before, I believe you worked in the ecumenism in terms of the Malankara Church. How would you describe the ecumenical situation here in the UK? Have you found that it's a positive environment or sometimes a bit more challenging?
I would say in terms of interchurch relations and for ecumenical relations, UK and particularly England would be one of the best places, fertile field for ecumenism, because it is a cross-section of the world. And I have a positive, good testimony to share as well, because as a parish priest here, about 13, 15 years ago, I've been hugely motivated, and I did learn the basics of my, not the practical end of working with the interchurch relations from specifically from Archbishop Angelos of the Coptic Orthodox Church, where I consider that as a blessed time when His Eminence was the president of the Council of Oriental Orthodox Churches in the UK. I was fortunate enough to work with him as a secretary of the organization. And that was one of the best memories that I would have from this country, because together we could organize, in those days, about 15 years ago, Oriental Orthodox festivals, where we had Eucharist conducting together in one tradition, but with the presence and cooperation and participation of all the Oriental Orthodox churches, and after which we had meetings together and then sharing of food from all the traditions too. So we set an example in those days, and I could only be grateful to the Coptic Orthodox Church and particularly to Archbishop Angelos for it. And is it all right if I ask you a question back?
Please, yes.
Well, probably that will help our audience, in the sense that because that you are coming from an English background, you have embraced Orthodoxy, and now you are a deacon of the Coptic Orthodox Church. And particularly, if I'm allowed to share your personal background, as you have a family, your wife, particularly coming from our tradition, about which we are happy. So we have family. So what was your journey from your English background to the Coptic Orthodox Church, and then particularly having a wife from the Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church? That would be interesting to know.
Well, in my case, Tirameni, as you mentioned, my family were, I would say, only nominally religious. They were Christian in the sense that the majority of English people would call themselves Christian, but would never step into a church. So if somebody else, another religion was there, they'd be Christian. If there was no other religion there, they're not too interested. And I myself got into, really interested in Orthodoxy from studying philosophy and theology. So I studied it purely academically. And I think for me, one of the greatest challenges was the endurance of the church, how it has survived and how it's responded to many of the questions that myself and a lot of the youth ask. You know, we talk about young people questioning their faith, but I think we often forget that there's people outside of the church who are questioning as well, and that they're asking for answers. And I think for me that was what drew me to the church, that this long, as we mentioned with the St. Thomas Christians, this long storied history and this long, let's say, endurance through many different trials. And I think I eventually just had to almost be forced to accept that there was a truth, for one, and that it was found in the church. I did a bit of, I'd call it soul searching when I was younger. I looked, almost logically at the different faiths, and I could never find that complete answer apart from in Christ. And it eventually led me through some personal struggles, to praying and finding that calling, and I was drawn to the Orthodox faith. And I think that it's something which I always tell people, is that you'll never find a fuller faith than the Orthodox Church.
Yes.
In the history, in the philosophy. As you mentioned, you taught and studied patristics. There's this vast level. Any question that people are asking today has been answered 1,500 years ago and has endured as an answer. And I think that's a thing of beauty that you will not find anywhere else. So that led me to Orthodoxy and eventually to the Coptic Church, where I obviously struggled to, like any person from an English background, struggled culturally to fit in, but was able to find home there. And I think, as you've mentioned with my wife's background as well, the blessing that we had was when she was here in the UK, because of this family of Oriental churches, she attended a Coptic church because there was no Indian Orthodox church nearby, and we were able to meet through that.
Okay.
And it is really a testament to the universality of the Orthodox faith, that someone from the Indian church and someone from an English background can meet in a Coptic church.
Yes.
And we've had our challenges with where we're going each week.
Yes.
But I found, for me, the draw to that universality, and you said that endurance of the church, is something that's kept me really here. And it's a great blessing to have survived it, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what to say, but I think this can be a message to my young people, as you have already asked that question earlier. I like the phrase particularly that you have mentioned about soul searching. Soul searching, and in your journey, the way that you are blessed in transcending the cultural and linguistic and faith background, and now the real communion. The real communion, that is a good example that you are setting up. That is huge. Thank you. That is great. That is brilliant. And soul searching is something that one thing that, in connection with that, if I may, with many of the young people these days, what I found, which is certainly encouraging, quite encouraging as well. There is a huge interest in many of them in knowing the faith, which could be a difference that I would have noted in past 13 years. At one point, when they get hugely dragged into the secular culture, and on another side, I would see a potential number of youth who wanted to explore their roots. So in one or other way, I will connect it into your way of doing the soul searching. So thank you. I think I would treasure up that.